Intro Blazing Saddles didn't just bend the rules. It took them, smashed them over its knee, and threw the pieces in the fire. This wasn't just another comedy. It was chaos wrapped in satire, fueled by guts, and delivered with a wink. Fights broke out behind the scenes, entire lines were censored, and the cast itself shifted when disaster struck on day one. Even Hollywood legends like John Wayne turned it down, but couldn't stay away from the premiere. This is the story of a film that tore through every boundary Hollywood thought it had. Fact 1. A star falls on day one. The very first day of filming should set the tone for a movie. For Blazing Saddles, it nearly killed the project. The role of the Waco Kid wasn't Gene Wilder's to begin with. It was cast with Gig Young, a respected Oscar-winning actor, with a sharp jawline and a Hollywood pedigree that studios adored. On paper, it made sense. He had the gravitas to balance the chaos around him. But the second the cameras rolled, cracks showed. His hands shook uncontrollably. His voice wavered. Crew members leaned in, wondering if he was adding layers to the character. Then, mid-scene, Young collapsed. Everyone froze. Some thought it was a dramatic choice, a method actor throwing himself into the role. But it wasn't acting, it was reality. Young was battling severe alcohol withdrawal. His body simply couldn't handle it. Within hours, he was pulled from production. The crew was stunned. The studio panicked. Losing a lead on day one is every director's nightmare. But Mel Brooks didn't panic. He walked off set, picked up the phone, and called one man he trusted completely, Gene Wilder. There was no audition, no script read, no debate, just a quiet request. "Can you be here tomorrow?" Wilder didn't even hesitate. He got on a plane. He arrived exhausted, jet-lagged, and completely unprepared. But when the cameras rolled again, he was the Waco Kid. The irony? What started as disaster ended up saving the movie. Wilder's tired, ghostly presence fit perfectly. The legend of the Waco Kid was born by accident. Fact 2, Richard Pryor's invisible role. Before cameras even rolled, Blazing Saddles had another secret weapon, Richard Pryor. Mel Brooks knew Pryor wasn't just funny, he was fearless. Brooks invited him into the writing room, and Pryor went straight for the jugular. His jokes weren't softened, they were sharp. They hit racism, power, and hypocrisy head-on. He gave the movie its teeth, but Brooks wanted more. He wanted Pryor to star as Sheriff Bart. Imagine it. Pryor riding into a whitewashed Western, smirking at every racist insult, firing back with wit sharper than a six-shooter. Brooks knew Pryor could pull it off, because Pryor didn't just make people laugh. He made them uncomfortable, then forced them to laugh anyway. The studio didn't see genius. They saw trouble. Pryor had a history of drug use and controversy. He was unpredictable. Too much of a risk. The studio shut it down. The role went to Cleavon Little. And here's the twist. Little was perfect. Smooth, stylish, sharp as a knife. He owned the role. But Pryor's fingerprints never left the film. His words, his rhythm, his danger. They pulsed through every scene. Little wore the badge, but Pryor's voice fueled the fire. Without him, Blazing Saddles wouldn't have had its edge. Pryor wasn't on the horse, but he was absolutely in the saddle. Fact 3, the screening that terrified Warner Brothers. When Warner Brothers executives finally saw a rough cut of Blazing Saddles, they were horrified, not amused. Horrified. This wasn't the Western comedy they'd imagined. This was a sledgehammer to the face of polite Hollywood. The racial satire, too raw. The fart jokes, too lowbrow. The horse punching, too outrageous. The slurs, too dangerous. As the credits rolled, the execs sat frozen, arms crossed, lips tight. Their verdict? Kill the movie. Dump it in a vault. Pretend it never existed. But Mel Brooks wasn't giving up. He fought for a test screening. One night, one theater, one real audience. The studio reluctantly agreed. The lights dimmed. The movie rolled. 20 minutes in, silence. Then a sound, the spark that saved the film. Fact 4, the fart that saved the film. It was the simplest scene imaginable, a group of cowboys around a campfire, eating beans. Then, one lets loose. Loud, wet, shameless. The audience broke. Laughter erupted like dynamite. People weren't just chuckling. They were howling, slapping knees, wiping tears. Then another cowboy farted, and another. It didn't stop. The theater roared, and with every laugh, the tension melted away. This was the first mainstream Hollywood movie to feature a fart joke, and it changed everything. Suddenly, the audience wasn't frozen. They were alive. From that moment, every outrageous gag landed harder. The studio execs, watching nervously in the back, had no choice. They couldn't deny the sound of hundreds of people laughing themselves breathless. The campfire scene didn't just break wind. It broke the curse. Blazing Saddles had just saved itself with the most primal comedy weapon of all, the fart. Fact 5. Gene Wilder's straight-faced genius. When Mel Brooks begged Gene Wilder to take over as the Waco Kid, Wilder agreed, but on one condition: I won't play him for laughs. I'll play him straight. Brooks didn't argue, and that decision became the secret weapon of the film. Wilder drifted through Blazing Saddles like a haunted gunslinger. His delivery was slow, dry, almost whispered. While everyone else mugged for the camera, Wilder stood still. That contrast sharpened every line. His comedy wasn't in the punchline, it was in the pain underneath. The Waco Kid wasn't just funny, he was tragic. A broken sharpshooter, so fast he could outdraw his own shadow, now hiding in a jail cell with a bottle. Wilder gave him dignity. He made the jokes land harder by not treating them as jokes. In a movie built on chaos, Wilder was the calm in the storm, and that calm made him unforgettable. Fact 6. The battle with the censors, Blazing Saddles, didn't just scare studio execs. It terrified the censors. They went page by page, red pen in hand, striking entire chunks of the script. Racial slurs, sex jokes, Nazi references, religious digs. It was all too much. One censor even warned Brooks, if you release this, you'll never work again. But Brooks never blinked. He argued every line. He refused to soften the blade. Take away the insults and you take away the point. Comedy for Brooks wasn't supposed to be safe. It was supposed to cut. Even the now iconic line, "Up yours," nearly got axed. Brooks fought for days to keep it, and he won. The censors eventually relented, trimming a few edges but leaving the heart intact. Brooks had proven his point. Blazing Saddles wasn't about being polite, it was about being fearless. Fact 7. Cleavon Little paid the price. Cleavon Little made history as one of the first black leads in a major Hollywood comedy. He was smooth, sharp, and magnetic on screen. But off-screen, he paid a price. During filming, Little received hate mail, real threats, slurs scrawled on paper, warning him to quit. Some audiences couldn't separate the satire from reality. They didn't see the joke. They saw a black man breaking Hollywood's unspoken rules. Little never let it show. On set, he was calm, composed, witty. He delivered every line with cool confidence, matching Wilder beat for beat. But behind the scenes, it stung. Blazing Saddles was supposed to mock racism. Instead, it forced its star to face it head-on. That's what makes Little's performance even braver. He wasn't just acting in a satire. He was living the very racism the film was mocking, and he did it without flinching. Fact 8. Yes, they really punched that horse. There are outrageous jokes in Blazing Saddles, but one stands above the rest. Mongo, the hulking brute played by Alex Karras, walks up to a horse and punches it in the face. The horse collapses, the crowd gasps, then erupts with laughter. It looked fake. It had to be fake, but it wasn't. That was a real punch on a real horse, filmed in one take. Now don't panic. The horse was trained, the stunt was carefully choreographed, and no animal was actually harmed. But the fact remains, they did it, and it shocked everyone. Brooks later admitted the gag felt like a dare. Let's see if we can actually get away with this. They did, and it became one of the most infamous moments in comedy history. Today, no studio would allow it. But in the 1970s, they just rolled the cameras and made history with a single swing. Fact 9. Mel Brooks put himself in the crossfire. Directors often hide in the shadows, letting actors take the spotlight. Not Mel Brooks. He threw himself into Blazing Saddles, literally. Brooks played not one, not two, but three separate roles. First, he was the bumbling governor, William J. Lepetoman, a greedy, clueless buffoon who embodied everything wrong with politics. Then he appeared as an Indian chief who, in a twist of irony, speaks fluent Yiddish. And finally, he slipped into the background as a random World War II German soldier, just for the fun of it. Brooks didn't just want to direct a comedy, he wanted to live inside it. By stepping on screen, he put himself at the center of the satire, taking shots alongside his actors. If critics hated it, he'd be hated too. That gamble paid off. His governor role in particular became iconic. Brooks wasn't just mocking Westerns. He was mocking the whole idea of power, greed, and stupidity in one absurd package. And no one was safe, not even him. Fact 10. John Wayne said, "No." Then sat front row. When Mel Brooks was casting, he had a wild idea. Bring in the Duke himself, John Wayne, the king of Westerns, the man who was practically the cowboy. Imagine Wayne riding into Blazing Saddles playing against his macho image in a self-parody. It would have been cinematic lightning. Brooks called him. Wayne listened. He even read some of the script. Then he paused, chuckled, and gave his verdict. "Mel, I can't be in this. It's too dirty. My fans would never forgive me." Brooks was disappointed but understood. Wayne wasn't wrong. His clean, patriotic image didn't leave much room for fart jokes and racial satire. But here's the kicker. When the movie premiered, John Wayne didn't stay away. He showed up, sat in the audience, and laughed his boots off. He couldn't appear in it, but he couldn't resist watching it. Sometimes legends know when to step aside and when to just enjoy the ride. Fact 11. Slim Pickens wasn't acting. Slim Pickens, the gravel-voiced cowboy who played Taggart, seemed born for the role. That's because he wasn't really acting. Pickens had lived the life. Before Hollywood, he'd been a rodeo clown, horseman, and real cowboy. He carried himself with the ease of a man who'd actually ridden for days under the desert sun. On set, he barely rehearsed. He didn't need to. The hat, the boots, the drawl, it was just him. That authenticity gave the movie balance. Amid all the absurd gags, horses being punched, Nazis invading a Western, villains breaking into a Warner Brothers backlot, Pickens grounded it. He made the insanity funnier because he was real. Brooks later said casting Pickens was like cheating. You didn't have to direct Slim. You just had to roll the camera. Fact 12. The scene they couldn't film. There's an infamous deleted gag from Blazing Saddles that even Mel Brooks admitted went too far. In one early draft, Sheriff Bart was supposed to walk into town and see a massive crowd of white townsfolk. To calm their fears, he was going to take a rope, pretend to lasso himself, and walk into the square as if he were a criminal being dragged. It was biting. It was daring. It was Pryor's idea. But when they rehearsed it, the crew fell silent. No one laughed. The image was too raw, too painful. For once, satire didn't land. It just reopened wounds. Brooks cut it. He knew the line between fearless and cruel, and he wasn't willing to cross it. The scene never made it to film, but it shows how close Blazing Saddles always walked to the edge, and how carefully Brooks knew when to pull back. Fact 13. The extras didn't know it was a comedy. When you watch the townsfolk scenes in Blazing Saddles, the background actors look genuinely confused, horrified, even angry. That's because they were. Many extras were recruited from local towns, and most hadn't been told they were filming a comedy. They thought it was a straightforward Western. So when Cleavon Little showed up as a black sheriff, they weren't reacting to a punchline. They were reacting as if it were real. Brooks loved it. That authenticity made the satire sharper. These weren't actors faking shock. They were real people embodying the racism the film was mocking. It was a risky trick, but it worked. Their confusion became comedy gold. Fact 14. Harvey Korman wasn't supposed to be funny. Harvey Korman played Hedley Lamar, the villain so over the top he sued people for mispronouncing his name. But here's the twist. Korman didn't play him as a clown. He played him as Shakespeare. Korman strutted, monologued, and delivered his lines with a straight face. as if he were in a grand drama. The absurdity came from contrast. While everyone else mugged for laughs, Korman acted like he was in Hamlet. That seriousness turned every line into a punchline. Brooks once said, "Harvey didn't tell jokes. He told the truth in the stupidest situation imaginable." That's why it worked. Without Korman, the villains might have been forgettable. With him, they became legends. Fact 15. The meta ending almost didn't happen. One of the wildest moments in Blazing Saddles comes at the end, when the brawl smashes through the Western set and spills into a Warner Brothers musical being filmed next door. Suddenly, cowboys are fighting dancers, pies are flying, and the movie literally tears itself apart. It was groundbreaking, but it almost didn't happen. Warner Brothers hated it. Executives wanted a normal Western ending, a showdown, a victory, a ride into the sunset. Mel Brooks refused. For Brooks, the chaos wasn't random. It was a statement. Movies don't exist in a bubble. They're part of Hollywood, part of culture, part of the mess we live in. The ending was about tearing down the walls, literally. In the end, Brooks won. And that final brawl became one of the most radical endings in comedy history. Blazing Saddles wasn't safe. It wasn't polite. It wasn't supposed to be. It was dangerous, raw, and fearless. And that's why it endures. 50 years later, it still feels shocking, still feels bold, still feels alive. It didn't just lampoon Westerns. It lampooned Hollywood. It lampooned America. It lampooned us. And somehow, through all the chaos, it made us laugh until we cried. That's the legacy of Blazing Saddles, a comedy that broke every rule and proved once and for all that sometimes the funniest thing you can do is tell the truth. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Blazing Saddles, don't forget to hit that like button to help more fans find this video. Subscribe for more incredible behind-the-scenes movie facts every week, and drop a comment below. What's your favorite scene from Blazing Saddles, or the one that shocked you the most? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.